Let me see here. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Hello, everyone. If you are joining us on Instagram, welcome, everybody. Okay. Let's see. Hopefully we're live. I think so. Okay. Very good. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. Everyone join us on Instagram. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We had a little bit of technical issues, and so we were just trying to figure that out. But I'm glad that we are able to have people here for this. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you can hear me on Instagram, just so I know that you guys are able to hear me for this. Okay. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you Let's see. Can you guys hear me on Instagram? Okay. Very good. Very, very good. All right. Okay. So today we're going to talk about EB1-A. It is a pathway, U.S. immigration, a way that you can get your green card. And it's one of the most efficient ways right now, honestly, if you're going to self-petition. And so today's live session, we're just going to go over the requirements for EB1. We're getting a lot of consultations, a lot of people asking us that they want to apply for a green card through the EB1 process, right? We're getting a lot of that. And so I think it's only right that we have this live session where we kind of educate people on what the EB1 requires, how you can boost your profile for this, and just to make sure that you're a good candidate for it before you go ahead and schedule that consultation. So for those of you who are new to this channel, what we do is that we have an editorial team. My team and I, we actually assist individuals, qualified individuals. We're putting together their petitions for their U.S. green card through the EB1-A or the EB2NIW pathway, right? So you want to apply for a green card, you want to do it by yourself, you want to self-petition. This process doesn't just require that you complete a form, like you fill out an application form. The application for EB1-A or EB2NIW, it's the I-140 application, right? It's pretty short, but that's not all that's required. You're not going to be there to explain to USCIS why you are qualified for this type of green card, right? And so you need to write a petition to accompany those forms. And what we do over here is that we help you draft those petitions to make sure that you're able to communicate your endeavor, well to USCIS to optimize or to increase your chances of approval, right? That's what we do. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, the reason why we started out, when we started out, we were talking a lot about EB2NIW, right? And for those of you who don't know what that is the employment-based second preference national interest waiver category, right? So there are two categories that we work with for individuals who want to work with us. We help you self-petition. We help you write your petition for either the EB1-A or the EB2NIW categories. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share something here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share something. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let's see. Okay, good. So for those of you who can see what I'm going to share here, there are several ways to get a U.S. green card, right? There's so many different ways. And what is the benefit of having a green card over a visa, right? The benefit is you get to live in the U.S. indefinitely. You can change employers. If you decide that you don't want to work for this employer anymore, you're not tied to them because they're filing for you, basically, right? You have the freedom. For those of you who are interested in education, you can, take advantage of the in-state tuition benefits, right? You don't have to pay. International students, oh my goodness. I came to US as an international student. I know how much that costs, but with your green card, you can then take advantage of other opportunities, that are available to you. So there's so many benefits of having a green card. And there's so many ways of getting the green card, right? You can get it through your family members who are already here. They can file for you. That takes a long time. A lot of people are not able to use that resource. Sometimes you can get an employer who's going to file for you. and so many other ways, right? This type of green card category that we're talking about is, even though it's under the employment type of green card, you don't necessarily need an employer for this, right? So specifically, we're talking about EB1A. It's under the umbrella of the EB's employment-based green card categories. It's actually the first preference. What does that mean to be first preference? It means that if you apply for a green card through the EB1A category and you're approved, your I-140 is approved, they will prioritize that green card getting to you, basically, right? So they always have a green card available for you if you're, for most of the world. Through the EB1A category. Now, what is this category? How do you find out if you're qualified? You're eligible if you're a non-citizen with extraordinary abilities. Now, what does that mean? It means that you are top tier in your field, right? You're the top of your field. For lack of a better explanation, top 10% in your field, right? You're someone who is either a researcher or founder, innovator, entrepreneur. You're employing individuals in the US, or you have the capacity to do so, right? You can apply under the EB1 category. Now, under the EB1 category, we always talk about EB1A, right? Why do we focus on EB1A? Because under the employment-based first preference category, there are individuals who have extraordinary abilities. There are individuals who are outstanding professors who are, categorized under EB1B, and then there are people who are multinational executives, right? The benefit of EB1A is that you can do it. You can self-petition. You don't need an organization to put in that petition for you, right? And so that's the benefit of it. Now, let's talk specifically about EB1A, because today we're going to go in depth. We're going to look at a case study, one of our clients who got approved for EB1A. We're going to talk about the things that made him stand out. But I think it's important that we understand what the requirements of EB1 are specifically, and then we can talk about how you can stand out for this, right? So there are three main requirements, guys, three main requirements. The first is that you have sustained national or international acclaim, right? The second is that you're going to show that you're going to continue in this line of work. And the third is you're going to explain to USCIS how your presence in the US will benefit the US. So these three things. Now, there are so many ways that you can, go about explaining different kinds of evidence that you can use to show how you're qualified for this. But specifically for EB1A, how do you show that you have sustained national international acclaim? Now, if you look at this list, I know it's hard to see, but let's just focus on this list, for example. USCIS is asking that if you want to show that you have exceptional abilities, you can either show them that you have gotten the top award in your field, or if you take a look at this list, that you have at least 3 out of 10 on this list, right? So this is the part where they talk about Nobel Prize. So for example, people who have won the Nobel Prize, who've been awarded with that, clearly have exceptional abilities, right? But if you haven't won, how many people have won the Nobel Prize? Not a lot of us. But some of us can look at this list and say, out of these 10 things, I have ways, at least 3 ways of showing that I'm qualified for this EB1A. The thing about our company is that in order for us to take you as a client, for us to put your petition together, we like you to have more than 3 out of 10, right? And I'll give you specific examples. But let's look at other ways that you can show that you stand out internationally. The first thing is prizes or awards for excellence, right? Now, we'll have consultations and people will say, okay, I got a prize or an award in my company, or I got a prize for in a small group that I lead. We're talking about international awards, so issued by international organizations, right? The bigger the organization, the better, basically, for this, because we're trying to say that you're top in your field and that you're recognized internationally, right? So we're talking about USCIS has given us examples like people who get dissertation awards, people who go to present at conferences and they get awards for their oral presentations or their posters. People who have been recognized by their peers, right, in notable organizations. These people can say that they stand out. So that's one way of showing you stand out. The second is publications about you. Now, a lot of times people will come and say, I don't have any publications. Well, are people interviewing you about your work, your expertise? Have you been interviewed about your work, and has that been put in newspaper articles? Has that been put on TV? If you have things like that, guys, it shows that you stand out. Remember, this category is for people who are top in their field, and I'm giving you specific examples of how you can show that you're top in your field. Other ways that you can show are, have you judged the work of others? It's expected that if you're an expert in your field, then you most likely at some point have judged the work of others, right? And so this is another way that you can show that you stand out specifically for EB1A. All right, so we have authorship, scholarly articles for people who are in fields where they publish articles regularly. These are some of the things that you can show. If you're in the arts field, have you done some art exhibitions? And when we talk about art exhibitions, some of the things that they'll be looking at are the location where you did this exhibition. Is it known for things like that? They're looking at the location. They're looking at how much of an expert you are in your field, right? People who have leading or critical roles in their organizations. So what kind of roles are we talking about? If you're a director in your organization, you have managerial roles, executive roles, and above, you can show that you stand you're an expert in your field. Commanding a high salary. Now, commanding a high salary, if you look at the salary of your peers and you can show that you earn significantly higher than that, that can be a way of showing that you have international acclaim. If someone who has a company, you can talk about your commercial success, and you can also get letters of endorsement from individuals in your field. So if you think about it, the first requirement is even telling USCIS that you stand out. That's the first requirement. And we just talked about several ways that you can show that you stand out. Even though USCIS says, show us one big achievement, or look at this list and show us at least 3 things that make you stand out. Guys, I think the more, the merrier. The more you have, the higher your chances of getting approved. Okay, so when we have these consultations, we look at your profile to kind of figure out where you stand, what are your possibilities of getting approved, and if we think that it's not quite there, we'll give you steps, give you pointers on how you can stand out for these things. Okay, so let's talk specifically about our client who just got approved for EB1A, right? So we had a client who came to us, had an exceptional profile, right? We talked to him and he had, was an innovator. He had created an exceptional tool in the public health space. Now, I remember during COVID, we talked about how hand washing was important in reducing infections, and that's been documented for years, right? And he was able to create a machine that would not only encourage hand washing, but will gamify the whole process. So imagine they tell you have to wash your hands for X amount of seconds or minutes, right? But a lot of people will, as they're washing their hands, I'm tired of this, and they will not wash their hands for like 2 minutes. But his device actually gamified the process so that you could see how well you're washing your hands, you can see when you're done, and it's used in healthcare facilities. So at the end of the day, the facility is getting the data of how well their personnel are doing with hand washing. And we've seen evidence that this significantly reduces infections in hospital environments. And so he created that during COVID. He got it patented. He did a whole lot of things, a lot of media runs and things like that. In fact, he created a company outside the US first and then brought that to the US. So it was an exceptional invention that he had. And so when he came to us, we looked at the profile and we saw that. Now, remember, guys, they say, show us in 3 ways that you stand out. Either you have a big one-time award, or you look at a list of 10 things and show us that you have at least 3 out of those, right? Our client actually ticked all of the boxes. And that's one thing that told us that this is someone who definitely should be doing EB1A, right? Now, the benefit of EB1A over EB2NIW actually is that EB1A is faster. You have faster processing. Remember that the individuals who are approved under EB1A, they're prioritized. They are able to get their green cards faster, right? And so the benefit of going for that is you get your green card faster, you're not tied to one employer, and you're able to stay in the US and continue your amazing work. Remember that all of this is to bring talented individuals to the US who are going to continue their work. So how is our client, able to show that his work, his innovation in the field of public health kind of stood out enough to be granted a green card under EB1A? Now, for him, he had awards. He could show that he had gotten international recognition. He had some pictures. So, guys, he had pictures that were attached to articles that showed, he had presented his work, internationally. Top government officials had actually endorsed his work. He had gotten recognized as a top inventor, like top 45 CEOs. So much stuff to show that not only is he doing something that's in the interest of the US, but he's been recognized by his peers. Not only that, he had been invited to membership, to be a member of top professional societies that require that you're either nominated to be part of it or you're at the top of your field. He had also judged the work of his peers. And guys, I'll give you a lot of time to ask questions at the end of this, but I just want to go ahead and get this out of the way so that we can keep going, right? So he had judged the work of his peers. He had awards. He had endorsements from experts in his field talking about the fact that, oh yeah, he's really impacted this field. He showed success, commercial success for this machine that he created, and things like that, right? So he was able to show that he was recognized internationally. The second thing is, how did he show that he was going to continue in this field? Remember, you can apply from anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in the US to apply. But once you show that you have this international acclaim, what then can you use as evidence to show that you're going to continue here? He was able to show evidence that he had worked with organizations, healthcare organizations. This machine was already in hospitals being used, right? So he got letters from those hospitals to show that, yeah, we're working with him. This is evidence that we're going to keep working with him. And that's what he used. The third part or requirement for EB1A is, how is this stuff beneficial to the US? How is his presence going to benefit the US? We talked a lot about the public health impact of what he was doing for the US, right? And so it was such a pleasure, honestly, to just work with this client, because it wasn't one of those petitions where you kind of have to figure out, how are we going to present this person? This person already had the perfect profile, and all we had to do was communicate that in a very easy to understand way to USCIS, so that when the officer gets that petition, they easily understand that this guy has international acclaim, he's well recognized, he has a product that is benefiting the US. It's actually creating jobs because it's employing people, but more so, it's a public health benefit, a great public health benefit, because we know that with hand washing comes a great reduction in infections, basically. Right? And then we were able to communicate that his presence was going to benefit the US, was already benefiting the US, and that's what we did. All right. So what kind of documents did he have? He had pictures, he had articles written about him. Now, for our client, one of the things that he had a ton of evidence, right? And that's where we come in, right? So a lot of times when we notice that people are not really sure what they need to present to USCIS, and there's such a thing as overload, right? Evidence overload. You want to take the piece of evidence that are the strongest, right, and present those. If you have evidence that's not in English, because he had a lot of articles written about him that were not in English, is either you get a translation for those or you leave them out, because USCIS is going to evaluate all of this in English, guys, right? So he had those, and we're able to pick the evidence that were very beneficial for his case and then present those. Right? We helped him draft his petition. We helped him draft his recommendation letters to ensure that it really captured the essence for what USCIS was looking for when it comes to the EB1 petition, right? So we're able to do that. And then finally, how did he show he was going to continue in the US? Yeah, we talked a lot about, hey, here's a letter from this top medical director talking about the fact that they were partnering with him. His product is listed on key government websites and things like that. We talked a lot about how his work was going to be beneficial to the US, and that's how we got it done, guys. He got approved, he expedited that thing, and he got his approval, right? The benefit of EB1A is, as soon as you get that approval, of course, you can go straight to adjusting your status, through the I-485 process, and then, you get your green card. So that's the benefit of EB1A, guys. If you're interested in taking advantage of this, we require that you schedule a consultation. Let's look at the breadth of your work, and let's determine if you have enough to apply for a US green card through the EB1A route, right? Now, for those of you who still want to apply through EB2NIW, we're still taking those cases as well. We still require a consultation, because we want to see all the things that you've done. So when you're coming for those consultations, please work on your CV, right? A lot of times people say, well, I have this other job that I'm doing, but it's not on my CV. No, put everything that you think is relevant on your CV, or just come ready to talk about those things. We're going to help you brainstorm. If it's EB2NIW, we're going to brainstorm to make sure that those advanced or proposed endeavors that you're planning to propose for USCIS to get approved, get your green card, makes sense, right? You want to make sure that you run that by people who have seen a lot of these cases to ensure that we make sense. Another thing is that we don't give you proposed endeavors. We don't tell you this is what you have to propose. No, we don't. We work with you, look at your profile, and by talking with you, we can come up with the best proposed endeavor that suits your your entire profile. If you're not quite there where we feel like you need to do a little bit more, we'll give you some specific things that you can do. Tell you, here's where you can volunteer. Here are the certifications that look good for your profile. Here are the professional societies that you can get into. Here are the things that you can do, XYZ, to make sure that your profile looks good for EB2NIW. We don't guarantee anybody is going to get approved. USCIS remains the authority when it comes to who's going to get approved for EB2NIW. But you want to make sure that you put your best foot forward, you're able to write a petition that presents your entire case in a way that is compelling enough to get that approval, right? So that's how we do it. That's how it's done over here. So if you guys want to do one-on-one consultations, go ahead and click on the link in our bio. You're going to see, how to get that consultation going. We have a lot of open slots for you. One other thing that I'm going to talk about is that we are going to have a webinar, right? The webinar is going to be on April 28, 2024. It's going to be 12 p.m. Central Time. And we're going to have a couple of people who've been approved come on there and tell you their story. But I think the most important thing about people who are stuck saying, do I need to attend the webinar or not? The benefit of the webinar is that you're able to be in a community of people who have similar goals, right? So for example, we're answering a question about someone who is in your field and you haven't even thought to ask that question, right? But just the fact that that person asked that question and got that answer, it helps you, right? And you're going to be, talking to people who've been approved. You're going to be, getting tips straight from the source. I think it's a really good opportunity for you to come and get your questions answered, right? For people who don't think they're quite ready to go for the process of EB1-A or EB2NIW, I think that that's a great opportunity for you. All right. So if you're stuck thinking, do I need to come for this webinar? Should I not come for this webinar? Hey guys, take advantage of that because you're going to be around a lot of people who either got approved or who have similar questions that you have, and you have the opportunity to get those questions answered. So those are some of the benefits of the webinar. All right. So I want to take some questions. I want to leave this open a little bit because I feel like, some people don't feel like they want to get a consultation just yet, but this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions and get those questions answered. And so I'll be happy to take those questions. Let me see who's going to get the first answer to your question. Let's see. Okay. So while we're trying to figure that out, there's a question coming from Dexpel. Okay. And this is probably from YouTube, right? Hi, wanted to ask about adjustment of status for B1, B2 to O1. How many days do you stay on B1, B2 before filing? Okay, so guys, this is a very this is a very technical question. I want you guys to do a little bit more research, right? B1, B2 is a non-immigrant visa that you're going to come on. When you're issued B1, B2 visas, the USCIS or the US government is giving you this visa to visit the US and not to come and stay. Right? So they have specific requirements for you. I highly encourage you not to overstay your visa on B1, B2. There might be some requirements when it comes to how long you can stay before you can apply for another visa type. I believe there's a 90-day rule on those types of visas, but look into it. We don't give immigration advice specifically for these situations. We offer editorial services to help you put your petitions together. But if you do a little more research, if you want to talk to an immigration attorney about this, what they'll tell you is you have to stay for a specific number of days. It might be 90 days right now, but look into that before you can apply for another visa type. And even when you do, make sure you're not out of status before you go to any other visa type, because it could be deemed that you're taking advantage of the system and it's fraudulent, right? So make sure that you get the right information about that. We help with editorial services for EB1A and EB2NIW. So this is a little bit outside the spectrum of the things that we cover. Okay. All right. I see more questions on Instagram. Let's go. Can you use your PhD stipend salary? Okay, hold on. I see a good question here. I may have, let's see. I'll take that again. Okay. May have lost that. Well, I think the person is asking if you can use your PhD stipend salary as being higher than others as proof of high salary. I don't know where you're doing your own PhD. I don't know where you're doing your PhD, but your PhD stipend is definitely not high enough to use as that, right? Just historically, if they're going to look at your evidence of a high salary, guys, they're going to compare you with your peers in your geographical location, right? So I'm pretty sure that, it's probably a $25,000, $30,000, or maybe much higher now. that may not be evidence, but you may have other things. If you're a PhD student, you probably have other ways to show that you stand out and not the high salary, because we all know PhD students, your stipend is probably less than 40,000, right? So it may not be the best example for this, because you can't compare your PhD stipend then to someone who is in, for example, Ghana or even South Africa or even a different country who's a PhD student. No, you want to compare yourself with people who are professionals in your field, in your geographical location. I really doubt that would suffice. Okay. All right, let's get another question. Can you please let me know about the business plan and professional plan? As a professional in cybersecurity, I'm a bit confused. Okay, we've worked with a ton of cybersecurity experts, so I'm guessing that you're talking a lot more about EB2NIW with this, right? So there are some petitions where we have to include evidence of a business plan, right? So we write a petition, and then we either ask the client to bring their business plan, or if they want us to draft it for them, we give them ideas about how to draft the business plan. In our experience, a business plan is required when you are proposing something that is entrepreneurial in nature. So, for example, you're saying you're going to start a business, or you're going to help people or small businesses do something, or you're going to help somebody, and it sounds like you're talking about a business or entrepreneurial venture. Then, in order to convince the US immigration that it's feasible that you're going to do this thing, then it helps to include a business plan. And sometimes if you don't include a plan, they ask you for it in the request for evidence. So the difference is that your petition letter talks about how you're well suited for EB2NIW and how it's going to be in the interest of the US, either the EB2 or the EB1. But then depending on what you say you're good at, depending on what you say your expertise is, you may then be required to include a business plan. So the business plan then will show the feasibility of what you're proposing. It will show the target, for example, target audience or target the focus of your venture. It will show the financial projections. It will show if you have potential investors. It will show how you're going to market this idea. It's just another way of telling someone that I'm proposing something as a business, but not only that, this is how I'm going to get it done, right? If you don't show them how, they may say, well, we doubt that you can do it. Now, we generally don't work with people. We don't just work with anyone on an entrepreneurial venture, right? We like to work with people who have already started a business or who have some idea of running a business. Because running a business, guys, is kind of difficult, right? For some individuals, like it's not just having the idea. You kind of have to have the skills to actually successfully put that idea in motion, actually coordinate people. And, so a lot of people have started businesses and failed. In order to convince the government that you can do this, sometimes they require a business plan. Some of the ways that we can get out of a business plan is if we say that we're going to work with existing organizations to get this done. So, for example, as a cybersecurity expert, instead of saying that you're going to start a company where you're going to help people with their cybersecurity needs, you can then say that you're going to use your expertise to work with, let me see, for example, right? You're going to work with healthcare organizations, existing healthcare organizations in the US, secure their information online, right? The healthcare industry, I just love the healthcare industry because it's so easy to prove that anything in the healthcare industry is important to the US. I mean, we're talking about lives of people, right? Data that, is essential for people's health and wellness. And it's the most hit when it comes to cybercrime, right? So let's say you're a cybersecurity professional and you're saying, I'm not going to start a business, but I'm going to work with existing health organizations like hospitals. I'm going to help them secure their data. I think that's the way you can get away from saying you're going to start a business, especially if you don't have any history with businesses. But then you're going to say that you're going to do that, right? And so I'm switching, guys. I'm switching between EB1-A and EB2NIW with the questions because I realize that, we have a mix of people here, right? Okay. The next question. Hello. Hi, Samson. I've been approved for for the I-140. Congratulations. I was unable to add my partner as a dependent. Can I still add my partner while filing the change of status? If yes, is there any implication? Okay. It's a great question. So you can add your partner, right, at the stage of adjusting status. Guys, life happens. Maybe when you are applying for the I-140 step. So for those people who are asking, what is the I-140 step? Well, in applying for a green card through the EB1-A or EB2NIW categories, there are two main steps, right? There's the I-140 application. After that gets approved, the I-140 is the form, right? Application for alien worker. It's the form I-140. After you get that approved, now you can either adjust your status or you go to the consular step. What does this mean? It means that if you're already in the US at the time that your I-140 is approved, you may be able to adjust your status from whatever immigrant status, non-immigrant status you were on. Let's say you're on an F1 student immigrant status, non-immigrant status. You can say, okay, I'm here in the US on a different status like H1B. I'm going to adjust using the form I-485 to a US green card, since I'm in the US. Now, if you're outside the US, the process is slightly different. It's going to go to the consulate, the US consulate in the country where you are. So you're going to go for an interview. And then at the end of that, you're going to stamp your passport. You're going to come to the US and you get your green card, right? Pretty easy. So he's asking that at the time he had got his I-140 approved, he probably wasn't married at that point. So he couldn't add his partner on there, right? So yes, you can add your partner at the point of the 485, the adjustment of status. As we're human. So the USCIS officer may say, what is the evidence that this is not just someone, let's say you got approved and a friend of yours is like, okay, put me on your application. So you have to show evidence that this is indeed a legitimate marriage, right? So when it comes time to adjusting your status, you may have to show evidence of your marriage certificate. You may have to show evidence that you've known this person longer than 2 months, basically. And for that, you can show your pictures, if you have pictures from the wedding, from, correspondence from when you guys have been talking, and so that's why, guys, it's good to document things. Like when you're falling in love and you're going on these dates, take pictures, right? Write the good old emails to each other, because at the end of the day, that becomes evidence with timestamps that shows that, hey, I've known this guy this long, and we're getting married and blah, blah, or we've gotten married. You have to be married to be able to add your partner, right? And so that becomes evidence. So make sure that you're taking your documenting stuff, because it helps in the end. This is how I got my green card. And at the time that I applied, I added my husband at the adjustment of status phase as well. And what happened? We were able to adjust status, but at the point where we actually had an interview process where they asked him specific questions about our relationship, right? They asked us the questions at the same time. So we're like, who said I love you first? Because they're trying to, the job of the officer is to figure out whether this thing is real, right? So it's like, who said I love you first? Where do you guys meet? How long have you guys been dating? So they may ask these questions to kind of figure out if this marriage is real. So be ready for that. But yes, you can add your spouse at this point as well. All right. So do we have any more questions? I'll be happy to answer those questions. Can you give an average timeline that it takes for an approved petitioner to get their green card as long as it's current? All right. Great question. So this is about, is this about EB1A or is it about EB2NIW? Let's talk about EB1A, right? So for people who are looking at this question, they're like, what do they mean by being current? Let's talk about that. In the context of EB2NIW, there are 2 steps, right? You get your I-140 approved. It used to be that as soon as your I-140 is approved, you can adjust your status right away. But it's not that way anymore, because there is a set or limited number of green cards available for this process. And because it's limited, USCIS is now giving out these green cards based on the priority date, which is based on when people applied, right? So for context, every month they release the visa bulletin. They tell us which group of people can apply for adjustment of status. And the last time I checked, it's the people who applied before January 15, 2023. So what does that say? It tells us that there's about a year backlog, to be honest. So a lot of people are getting their I-140s approved on the EB2NIW, but they can't really move forward with that process. So that's what it means. So when you say your priority date is current, it means you're able to adjust status right away. The benefit of EB1A is that it's current for most people. So as soon as you get approved, you can apply for adjustment of status. This person is asking for the average timeline it takes for an EB1A approval to get their green card. Guys, the only thing you can expedite is the first step, getting your I-140 approved, right? After that, everything else is up to USCIS. I've seen people where it's taken 5 months, 8 months to get this process done. The good news is that while you're waiting for this adjustment to be completed, your life goes on. You can apply for employment authorization document that allows you to keep working, because the government realizes that it will take you time to actually get this green card in hand. You can apply for permission to travel outside the US, which is using the form I-131. So you really don't have to worry too much about this process taking too long, because there are things that you can do to make sure that you're able to work and travel while this process is still in place. But historically it's taken months, right? And anywhere from 5 months to 8 months. I mean, at the time I applied, it took 7 months, but it may not be that for you. The good news about USCIS is that you can go on their website and then you can look up something called processing times, and that allows you to see, based on where your case has been, they're processing your case, you can see the average. Now, USCIS will put the longest time possible there. So if you go there, you might see 18 months. But just working with people, through the years, we've seen that anywhere from 5 months to 8 months, you might get your green card. Okay. All right. Any more questions regarding this one? So let's see. Does having an approved I-140 through EB2NIW influence your EB1A approval? This is a great question, right? These two processes are independent of each other, right? So if some of you have applied for EB2NIW and gotten an approval, but because of the weight, you're like, I want to do EB1A. Some of you are just held back by fear. You don't want to progress because you're like, oh, what if my EB1 gets denied? Is that going to affect my already approved EB2NIW? The answer is no. These two processes don't have anything to do with each other, right? It's like, imagine if you find, except if you're being, what's the word now? You're not being honest, right? There's some people that maybe they lied on one application and then the new application will kind of like oust them. So with the new application, they'll figure out this person is not really in this field. Now, if that's the case, then maybe not, right? We don't want you to tell lies on anything that is immigration related, or just as a principle in life anyway, right? So generally, these things are not, they're not intertwined, right? You could get a denial on EB1A, but doesn't affect your already approved EB2NIW I-140 petition, right? So operate in faith, guys. If you're qualified for both and you can afford it, go for it, right? That's what I would say. The EB1A is, I mean, people apply for both at the same time. We've had clients who have done EB2NIW, but then they don't want to do the EB1A because they're scared. And I always say to them, it's not going to hold you back, right? Go ahead and apply if you're qualified. All right. Any more questions? Okay. Hi, Owen. I just want to say congratulations to you because I feel like you were actually approved. So, and I think you worked with us. So yeah, congratulations again. All right. So, hello, doctor. Can you please explain the process of applying for work authorization after your I-140 EB2NIW approval? Okay, this is a great question. So, to the best of my knowledge, right? An I-140 approval is not an immigration. It's not an immigration status. It doesn't confer an immigration status to you, right? So you may not be able to apply for an EAD card just yet, except you're able to, you're applying for adjustment of status, right? So that's why it's important that you maintain your non-immigrant status, maintain that non-immigrant status until you're able to apply for adjustment of status. There is another way through which USCIS has said, okay, we can give you an EAD card while you're waiting. And that's true if you have compelling circumstances, like let's say there's hardship, some hardship going on, you're able to show that your finances are impacted, and they can give you an EAD based on that, right? But the problem with that is that they probably won't give you past 1 year, and if your priority date then becomes current, let's say you follow the visa bulletin like we're showing, and your priority date then becomes current, you may not be able to adjust your status from within the US, right? So these are things that you need to know before you figure out if you're going to move forward with this or not. The fact that you may not be able to adjust that status once it becomes current from within the US. If you're ready to go outside the US to then go do the consular processing, maybe consider this. But just to the best of our knowledge, we don't know any other way that you can get that EAD card. Like guys, if you've done it where you're actually waiting on you've gotten an approved I-140 and now you're waiting for adjustment of status, and the only way that we know you're able to do that is if you're on OPT and you're extending your OPT for the STEM extension. But outside of that, based on approved I-140, we don't really know anyone who's done it that way, right? But we're always open to get feedback from you guys if you've been able to do it. All right. Any more questions? How do you prove publication criteria? How many publications are required? This is for EB2NIW? Okay. So there's no set number of publications required for EB2NIW. We've worked with people who have 0 publications. Now, if you say you're a researcher, they probably will require publications because that's the currency in research. I've worked with people who have 0 publications. I've worked with people who have 1, 2, And then I've seen people who have 50 publications. So it's just a broad spectrum. Remember that publications are just one way of showing that you stand out. There's so many other ways of showing that you stand out. So regardless of the number of publications that you have, if you're really qualified for any one of these processes or these categories, we can work with you. But we require that you do, a consultation first to make sure that that's the right part for you. Okay. Any more questions? Let's see. I'm just going to go through this to see. Okay, for EB1A, can I also use presentations and solution documents for deployments within the organization as part of publications? Okay, EB1A presentations. Yes, USCIS has said that if you got an award from a presentation that you did at, let's say, at a conference, that will count. So for EB1A, it's not just presentations now. It's how good were you in that presentation? Were you invited based on your expertise to give a special talk at that meeting? Are you a subject matter expert in your field? That could be used as evidence, for EB1A, as evidence that you're an expert in your field, right? Not necessarily publications. That's not a publication, right? Now, when it comes to using solution documents from your organization, make sure that you're allowed to share those documents, right? We've worked with a lot of people where they've done so much, but they're not allowed to share those things. So if you're not allowed to share stuff that you've done, a clever way would be to get a recommendation letter from someone in that organization who knows of what you've done. You're not really, disclosing too much, but the person is able to attest to some of those things that you've done, right? Now, if you're able to share those documents and, it's not, there are no restrictions when it comes to privacy, those could help to talk about the impact of your work, but those are not publications. Publications are two types. We could talk about media publications. Let's say people are coming and interviewing you, you're on podcasts, they're interviewing you, they're putting your work out there on blogs, news media, talking about how impactful your work is. That's one way. Or you're actually publishing things, talking about, hey, here's my work, here's the things that I've done, and how those things are special, right? So even though you may not be able to use these things that you talked about as evidence of publications, we could actually use them as evidence that you're a subject matter expert, if you know what I mean. So again, without knowing the broad entire story about what your profile looks like, I would say that these things can be used in a clever way. But I would like to look at the entire profile just to see what else you have. Okay. All right. Let's see. Any more questions? For someone transitioning to a PhD from a BSc, can they petition for the EB2NIW or EB1A while completing the degree, or would they have to get their PhD conferred to start the process? Okay. So if you are, I did that actually, guys. I went from a BSc to a PhD, right? But you have to understand that if you're in a PhD program, until you complete that degree, what you have is a BSc, right? So there are some programs that will allow you maybe after 2 years, get a master's degree, and then you keep going on, right? Now for EB2NIW, there's a degree. If you're applying on the basis of an advanced degree, there's a requirement for that. If you have only BSc, they want you to have at least 5 years of experience. For someone going straight from a bachelor's to a PhD, I don't know if you have 5 years of work experience in your field, but in general, the more years of experience you have, or the higher your degree, the higher your chances of approval, right? That's what we've seen. So if you haven't completed that degree and your application is hinged on having an advanced degree and you don't have 5 years of work experience, maybe complete the degree so that you at least have to take that requirement of an advanced degree. Even though the advanced degree requirement is a bachelor's, remember it's a bachelor's plus years of experience, right? So if you have that, then if you say, okay, I've had 5 years of experience or even 10 years of experience with my bachelor's degree, you may be able to apply right away. But if you don't have work experience, you haven't finished your PhD, then it makes sense to finish that degree so that you can have, the advanced degree requirements and done, right? Now, for EB2NIW, it's not just advanced degree. You could apply on the basis of exceptional ability. Exceptional ability means you stand out in your field, right? There are people that stand out in their fields that don't need a degree to stand out. So if you're applying based on the fact that you're an athlete, for example, you don't need a degree for that, right? But you can show evidence that you've been awarded, you've gone for all these competitions, they're giving you medals for these things. That could actually get you a green card. So again, I would say schedule a consultation. Let's look at these things and just really figure out. And guys, don't wait till you're about to apply to schedule a consultation, because sometimes if you're not quite ready, we may say, here's a 3-month plan or a 6-month plan that could get you there. But imagine that you're about to get out of status and you're coming at that time. We may be limited with the things that we can say you can do, right? So the earlier you come, the better, where we can talk about how to, put your application together, make it stronger. For EB1A criteria, kindly tell us more about the performance of a leading or critical role in distinguished organizations. It's a great question. So the kind of examples that USCIS has given is people who are like directors at the organization. They have executive roles, like you have like even in a professional organization. Let's say you're the president of that organization. You have a critical role there. You lead people. You're entrusted with. You're not just a follower, basically, right? We have two types of people. We have people who lead, and we have people who diligently follow. There's nothing wrong with being in any one of these groups, but I'm just saying that if you're one of the people who, when you get into the organization, you're spearheading things, you're bringing initiatives, you're like the trailblazer when it comes to moving things along, right? Then you're in a role that is a leadership role. If you're in research, you're the PI, principal investigator, or you are selected to be on a special committee, you're part of special committees or boards, right? These are people that have leading roles, right? Let's say they want to hire someone at your organization, and they pick people based on, okay, who do we bring together to pick this person that's going to lead this organization? And you're one of those people that they pick, right? It shows that you have a leading role in your organization. So we're talking about directors, we're talking about heads of organizations, we're talking about people who have leadership roles in their organizations. These are people that, board members, committee members. Let's say you work in a university and they have PhD students there or master students there, and you're part of the people who decide if these students are going to get their degrees or not. That's a leadership role, right? So just think about leader in anything that you're talking about, and if you're one of those people, then of course you can apply through you have a leadership role, basically a leading role. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? Let's see. Hi, goodness. Does a lawyer with a master's degree from an American university currently on H-1B stand a chance for getting a green card through the EB2NIW route? That's a great question. Yes, you do. And we've worked with people in your field. If you look at our page, we try to put out the profiles of people that we're working with, who's gotten approved, to give you a sense of the different fields that we worked with, right? So we've worked with people in the legal field. Now, the most important thing is, it's not even about your field. It's about, for EB2NIW, is what will you do with this degree that you have? So for the guys that we worked with who are in the legal field, some of them are working on projects that have to do with human rights. Some of them are working on projects that have to do with cybersecurity. Some of them have worked on projects that have to do with, homelessness in the US, right? We have someone that has gotten her green card working on the problem of homelessness, right? Mediating between landlords and tenants and things like that. So it's great that you have your master's degree. That's awesome. But the next question is, what is it that you're going to propose? Is that a critical issue that you're going to be working on while you're here in the US? And I would encourage you to look for something that is required by the US. Now, guys, sometimes this thing that you're proposing is not what you're doing right now. It's helpful if it's what you're doing right now. That's helpful. But realize that as a professional, with the education that you have and the training and the expertise, there are things that you can do outside of what you're doing right now, right? You have the expertise for it. Because you're working in this organization and you're working mediation, maybe divorce cases here, does not mean that that's the only thing you can do. If you work in a different organization, you may be given a different set of tasks to accomplish. So that's why a consultation is important, so we can look at your work and decide which one of the things that you've done could be the key to getting your green card. I want to give you guys a tip, something I thought about last week, actually. I actually follow, the US, let's see, it's called, I follow a lot of government, organizations on Instagram, but the one that comes to mind is the US Health and Human Services. And this is specifically for people in public health, right? If you go on that website, that's a government website, right? That's a government agency. You will see some of the cases or some of the causes that they're passionate about, right? Just looking at their website right now, you will see they're talking about millions of STDs infections every year, right? That's one of them. They're talking about cancer, early detection. They're talking about Parkinson's. They're talking about Black maternal health, right? This should give you ideas about the causes that the government agencies in the US care about. the causes, things that they are funding actively, right? So when it comes to proposing things, look around you, investigate government websites, investigate their pages. What do they care about? What is it that they're talking about? That could be a clue for what you're going to propose for EB2. Now, it's helpful to use things that you've actually you have some kind of experience in, right? Don't just pick things from the blue. Like a lot of people talk about the use of AI. Use AI intelligently if you're going to use it for your coming up with ideas. But we've seen people who just come with so many different ideas. For EB2NIW, make sure it's as specific as possible. And one of the clever ways to see what the US government is interested in is to follow their official pages, and you'll see all of that, right? Okay. Let's see, how much time do we have left? 5 minutes. Again, guys, we have a webinar coming up. The benefit of this webinar is you are in an environment where people are asking questions. There are professionals present. You're going to answer your questions. If you can't afford our one-on-one consultation, you're trying to figure out, okay, do I need to come for that or not? Guys, take advantage of the webinar. We're going to have ample time for question and answer. We're going to try and bring some of the people who've been approved so you can ask questions. And we're going to make sure that everyone who comes for the webinar will get a discount on a one-on-one consultation. So if that's what you want, if you're thinking about, okay, I want you to evaluate my case and things like that, consider the webinar. That's going to be really helpful. So you can go on any one of our posts and just comment the word webinar and you get more information, right? For this live session, we're actually going to put the live up as well, so that you guys, if you've missed the live session, you can actually get access to that. How do you contact us? Email info@myeb2niw.com. We're going to give you the answers. You can get in our DM. You can ask questions there. We don't do evaluations in the DM. Everything gets sent to a consultation as well. All right. So if you're interested in the webinar is actually coming up April 28th. I believe it's probably in 2 weeks, right? Or a little less than 2 weeks. April 28th, it's going to be virtual. We're going to have in-depth sessions on EB1-A. We're going to give robust examples. We're going to have some resources that we're going to send to some of our clients or some of our participants who are part of that webinar. We just want people to have the tools that they need, right? Everyone who comes to that webinar is going to get a comprehensive list of what's required for EB1-A and EB2NIW. You get a list of documents required, and we'll get a chance to actually, open up the session and answer some of these questions that you guys have. Again, if you want to be part of the webinar, please go on any one of our posts, comment the word webinar, and you get information direct to your inbox for this. If you feel like you want to email us, do it at info@myeb2niw.com, and we'll answer your questions. All right. Okay. So again, sign up for our webinar. In fact, if you go on the link in our bio, you have so many resources there. We have YouTube videos, we have podcasts, we have free ebooks, guys. We have everything. We have something for everyone. All right. So please take advantage of these resources. This is 2024, guys. There's so much information out there. You can get a green card, a US green card, based on your work, based on your exceptional skills. You have the capacity to get the green card. If you need assistance with getting this is something you can do on your own because we have the toolkit for that. But if you need our services where you're like, you know what, I'm a busy professional, I don't have time to write this 20-page or 30-page document to convince the US government that I'm qualified for this green card, right? You need help with that writing. We have professionals on our team, guys. We have people on our team that can take that vision of yours, put it on paper, make it in a way that we communicate the best part of your profile to USCIS in such a way that we increase your chances of getting approved. That's what we do. All right. So thank you so much for joining this live session. All 70-something of you on Instagram, and of course, people from YouTube and LinkedIn and other platforms that we're broadcasting on right now. Thank you so much. We have a webinar coming up. Please take advantage of those, those resources. Share the information with your friends. Share good information with your friends, guys. That's the best thing you can do. Share good information. Let them know that they can get their green cards with their PhDs they're getting. They can get their green cards with their master's degrees. You don't need to be in the US to apply. You can apply from anywhere in the world and get the benefit of this as well. All right. So we've worked with different fields, the legal field. We've worked with people in public health, medicine, geologists. We've worked with project managers, program managers. We've worked with civil engineers, all the engineers, civil, mechanical, chemical. We've worked with all of them, right? We work with people in the tech space, right? When we talk about tech, we're talking about cybersecurity experts, Splunk professionals, Splunk engineers. We've worked with all kinds of individuals, right? So the good thing about the US is all they're saying is, do you have the requirements for this type of green card? If you do, what is it that you're going to do in the US with your expertise, right? If you're top of your field, consider EB1A. But if you're like, you know what, I have a little bit more time, you know, I'm currently in my PhD program, I can wait a little bit. There's a little bit of a wait for EB2NIW, but I'm still qualified because I stand out. Then consider EB2NIW, right? And these are some of the ways that you can get your green card today. So thank you so much for joining us. I am going to sign up right now because it's 5 o'clock already. But if you have further questions, please get in our DMs and ask us questions. If you want to get information about the webinar, hey, we have the information out there. If you want to do a one-on-one consultation, you don't have time for the webinar, hey, go ahead and schedule that today, okay? And we'll look forward to talking to you one-on-one. All right, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next live session. Bye-bye.